Hi, it's Eva Longoria, and let's be real. After 40, we should ask for more from our skincare. I swear by Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. With vitamin C, pro-retinol, and hyaluronic acid, it reduces my wrinkles, firms, and brightens. And it's not a procedure. It's just a hardworking moisturizer.
Revitalift Triple Power Moisturizer by L'Oreal Paris. Grab it today in fragrance-free or with SPF 30. Available at your local Target.
And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day as the whole world is reacting to a prime time address by the President of the United States. It lasted 18 minutes, and one of the questions about it is how do you get that 18 minutes back? And the headline for Mediaite, which is actually a pretty good headline, they say Trump's bizarre primetime speech argued with reality. Okay, that's a good summary. There's also another story, from the Daily Beast, and the president's obsession with his long list of foes is apparently keeping him up at night. Trump issues late-night threat to arrest his enemies. And it says that President Donald Trump issued an unhinged call to arrest his political enemies in a late-night Truth Social post. The 79-year-old boosted a message from a pro-MAGA account late Tuesday calling for the arrest of former Attorney General Merrick Garland and former FBI Director Christopher Wray, who he appointed, for God's sake, and many others. Okay, does that leave you feeling comfortable that the President of the United States wants to arrest these people? By the way, no information on what the charges are, except that he dislikes them. And meanwhile, there is this regarding the Mediaite story by Colby Hall on what the speech was like last night. There is a long-standing, mostly respected convention in American television when all the major networks cut away from regular programming to carry a president live. Something important is about to happen. A national tragedy, a military strike, a resignation, occasionally history. And that is why you have people like Tucker Carlson who had said that, he had it from inside information that Trump was going to announce a new war against Venezuela, which God forbid. But no, that didn't happen. No new war, thank God. No new claim of a successful peace. The only news in the speech was that the promise of a warrior's dividend. That's how he refers to it. A warrior's dividend of $1,776 to people who are serving our country in the armed forces. Even more important would be putting more money into equipping our armed forces properly to match some of the money that China and Russia have poured into their own military. In any event, what they say in Mediaite is what viewers got Wednesday night, last night, was none of those things. No, it wasn't a national tragedy or a military strike or a resignation, though there is news about that we covered on the show yesterday. Not a surprise that Dan Bongino, the deputy director of the FBI, has packed his stuff and is leaving the administration. In any event, what viewers got Wednesday night was none of those things. Instead, it was a campaign rally speech, except much shorter, delivered from the White House, carried live on every major network with no news to report. It was a president arguing not with political opponents, but with observable reality itself. The mismatch between format and content immediately made the speech feel strange. President Donald Trump spoke as though he were still on the campaign trail, loudly recycling familiar grievances, blaming former President Joe Biden for nearly everything, and insisting that the economy is roaring even as polls show voters remain unconvinced. The address felt less like an effort to inform the nation than an attempt to argue voters out of their own experience. The only thing that was missing from a rally was President Trump dancing to YMCA, or he doesn't really dance to "I'm Proud to Be an American" to Lee Greenwood, but the Village People he does. It was, in other words, a disorienting experience, writes the Daily Beast. A president 1 year into his term shouting as if still campaigning against his predecessor, apparently convinced that the old tonic would finally salve his sagging approval ratings. A chief executive demanding credit for economic progress that voters insist they have not experienced. Most strikingly, a politician once known for reading rooms, now seemingly genuinely baffled that the room was not reading him back. And the one thing that is very striking is he obviously had gotten information from his staff that he had to speed it up, otherwise they would cut away from him in the middle of the speech. And given the fact that they had granted all this time on all the networks, his tone of voice was actually closer to a rally than you would expect from a televised address. But there was no one else in the room. He was alone in a conference room at the White House. It wasn't even the Oval Office or anything as dramatic as that. And he spoke in these tones that echoed the sound of so many of his rallies, speaking about the glory of tariffs in particular. This is a representative excerpt, clip 19.
And far greater national security. Much of this success has been accomplished by tariffs. My favorite word, tariffs, which for many decades have been used successfully by other countries against us, but not anymore. Companies know that if they build in America, there are no tariffs, and that's why they're coming home to the USA in record numbers. They're building factories and plants at levels we haven't seen, AI, automobiles. We're doing what nobody thought was even possible, not even remotely possible. There has never, frankly, been anything like it. 1 year ago, our country was dead. We were absolutely dead. Our country was ready to fail, totally failed. Now, we're the hottest country anywhere in the world.
Okay, that goes along with the theme of climate change, does it? Coming up, President Trump did find time in his golden 18 minutes to talk about what he believes was the worst thing that Joe Biden did to our country. And that thing he holds responsible for all the misfortunes and difficulties that the United States has encountered. We are also going to have a chance of getting a reaction from Chris Whipple, who is the author of that interview that has been stirring so much controversy and reconsideration from the Trump team, an interview with the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. What was the most surprising? Well, what's most surprising to me was that she agreed to this interview and this series of interviews. Why? What was she hoping to gain? Personally or for her MAGA team? We will get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. So Netflix is basically Santa this year. 2 NFL games on Christmas Day, streaming live. At 1 p.m. Eastern, it's Cowboys, Commanders. Then at 4:30, you've got Lions, Vikings. Midwest football, playoff stakes, and probably some snow. Watching holiday football is a tradition the whole family can enjoy. Open some gifts, grab some food, settle in, and watch NFL Live on Netflix this Christmas Day.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring. Snowing and blowing up bushels of fun.
And it's a very busy season for Chris Whipple because he conducted those 11 interviews, and they were about an hour each, with the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. Before that, he was the author of an outstanding book about the White House Chiefs of Staff. And it's a book where I wrote a similar book, but not nearly as complete because my book was from decades ago, The Shadow Presidents. But his book, The Gatekeepers, takes a look at the people who actually held the position of Chief of Staff. Susie Wiles was the first woman to hold that position. Chris Whipple's other books include bestsellers, such as Uncharted, How Trump Beat Biden, Harris, and the Odds in the Wildest Campaign in History. And his book about the Chiefs of Staff is called The Gatekeepers. Chris, were you surprised at all that Susie Wiles agreed to all of these interviews, 11 of them?
Yeah, it was stunning, pretty astonishing, to be honest. We began talking in January, almost a year ago, and I was immediately pleasantly surprised by how unguarded and freewheeling she was in her conversation with me. Everything was on the record, unless explicitly agreed otherwise. That never happens with senior White House officials. You know, they're usually on deep background. But,
right, and they certainly don't allow a tape recorder. And these were all taped interviews, were they not?
Correct. That's correct.
So
yeah, no, it was extraordinary to me, and even more surprising was just how candid she was about every moment of crisis from the day they began, January, until quite recently. And it began with the blanket pardon of all the January 6 insurrectionists. And she told me the behind closed doors story of how she had argued with Trump. She said, wait a minute, don't we want to look at these cases individually? And Trump pushed back and said, no, these guys got a terrible deal. I'm paraphrasing. They all got sentences longer than the guidelines. And she went along. That turns out not to be true, by the way. But anyway, from that day forward, I was privy to everything she was doing. Not everything, but she was telling me about her dealings with Trump and the rest of the inner circle all the way until quite recently.
Okay, so my question is, she's not a newcomer to politics. She's been deeply involved for many years. Wouldn't she be worried that there might be some pushback from her giving you this kind of access to her thoughts, to internal struggles and disagreements, as you just mentioned? Why wasn't she worried about the impact of what she was doing?
Yeah, look, I can't read her mind. I don't know why she evidently decided it was worth doing. She clearly did. But you know what? I've read all kinds of theories about how she must have had some Machiavellian purpose, that she was firing a shot at J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio or even Trump himself. And I just think it comes down to something very basic that I've learned over the years. And that is, people want to talk. People want to tell their story. And if you're good at putting them at ease and giving them a comfort level, you can get amazing things. That's been my experience over the years. And I think she was determined to try to advance a story about the Trump White House It was different from Trump 1.0, where when she thinks they were vilified. Trump was vilified, and she thought I would give her that fair hearing, I think.
What about the idea that somehow she is now doomed in terms of her future as the White House chief of staff? Do you think she has a chance of lasting all 4 years? So certainly that wasn't the pattern in Trump's first administration.
Not only do I think she has a chance, I think it's probable. Look, she could think midterms, which are 2026. She could decide to depart then. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if she lasts the whole. Look at the way the Trump White House rallied around her. Hours after my piece came out, everybody was singing her praises, including Trump. Trump was a lead cheerleader. She is unique in that Trump trusts her in a way that he never trusted any of her predecessors or anyone else, for that matter, in the White House. And I think he needs her.
And why? What is that trust based on? I mean, she was his advisor during the campaign, but given what Trump is looking for, which is not just loyalty but fealty, people who submit themselves to the will of the boss. I find when you read your reviews and your interviews in Vanity Fair is she could be pretty tough in expressing disagreement with President Trump. He likes that from her?
Well, that's the fascination of her. I think she's the most interesting person in American politics right now, not only because she ran that against all odds 2024 campaign and won it. He wouldn't be president without her. First female chief in history, but also a woman who goes through this journey from conventional GOP, James Baker, Ronald Reagan style operative to being all in on MAGA. And part of it is her upbringing by her famous father, Pat Summerall. Part of the magic that she has with Trump is that Summerall was an alcoholic. She got a PhD in dealing with difficult men, number one. And number two, they had this kind of bond. The first time they met, Trump sat there in awe that he was in the company of the daughter of the great Pat Summerall. It's just wild. He believes in two things. He believes in winning, and he believes in genes. He believes Genes. And in her case, Pat Summerall was one of Trump's idols.
Okay, and with Pat Summerall as one of Trump's idols, there is reason to reconsider everything that we think we know about President Trump and his MAGA administration. Have you spoken to, just yes or no, to Susie Wiles since the interviews are published?
Not since Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. when the article dropped.
Appreciate it. Chris Whipple, his interviews can be read in Vanity Fair. I'm sure it will be a book, and a very important book when that time is right. Meanwhile, his book, The Gatekeepers, is an important book, and as is Uncharted, posted on our website, michaelmedved.com. Merry holidays to you, Chris Whipple, and thank you for joining us.
This is Charlie. He's my part rescue dog, part whirlwind. Half of his breakfast always ends up on the floor. And he leaves fur everywhere. That's why I grabbed the Bissell Power Clean Fur Finder. It's cordless, powerful, and actually finds fur you don't even see. If you've got a pet like Charlie, you've got fur everywhere. The Power Clean Fur Finder gets that. Discover how Power Clean Fur Finder makes pet cleanups effortless at Bissell.com.
And the talk about Susie Wiles and the interviews that she gave so repeatedly to Chris Whipple. The one thing that, and Chris Whipple appreciate very much his time and conversation and insight and perspective. I would just add to that there is, and I have found this in interviews that I've conducted with people, if people know that you're writing history, that you're doing a book that is going to be part of the public record, they find it almost irresistible to include themselves in the pages of history that you are going to be preparing about them. And I do think that Susie Wiles probably has that desire to try to connect with the historical record herself, particularly as her status as the only woman ever to hold that position of White House Chief of Staff. Meanwhile, his performance last night, which undoubtedly had input from close advisors like Susie Whipple, like Stephen Miller, and like the people that he has trusted during the campaign and during the first year of his presidency. However, there was a mismatch between format and content. That is what Colby Hall wrote in Mediaite. And it made the speech feel strange. President Donald Trump, he writes, spoke as though he were still on the campaign trail, loudly recycling familiar grievances, blaming former President Joe Biden for nearly everything, and insisting that the economy is roaring even as polls show voters remain totally unconvinced. The address felt like an effort to inform the nation, less like an effort to inform the nation than an attempt to argue voters out of their own experience. It was, in other words, he writes, a disorienting performance of President 1 year into his term shouting as if still campaigning against his predecessor, apparently convinced that the old tonic would finally salve his sagging approval ratings. A chief executive demanding credit for economic progress that voters insist they have not experienced. Most strikingly, a politician once known for reading rooms now seeming genuinely baffled that the room was not reading him back. And then he goes on that the context matters. Trump ran on a promise that he would fix inflation on day one, a line that was never meant literally, but was clearly meant emotionally. Voters expected to feel relief quickly. A year into his presidency, affordability remains the dominant concern, and his approval numbers reflect these frustration. Government data show that inflation has stabilized but not reversed. The Consumer Price Index is roughly where it was when Trump took office after having fallen significantly in the final months of Biden's presidency. Prices are no longer surging, but they are still high. For most households, the decision is academic. Then to go back to President Trump's address last night, in the course of 18 minutes, he kept going back again and again and again, even when it didn't fit at all, to what he considers to be the worst thing that Joe Biden, quote, did to our country, which was the colossal border invasion in President Trump's terms. This is clip 20.
Driving up housing costs was the colossal border invasion. We have never been invaded. This is the worst thing that, frankly, in my opinion, the worst thing that the Biden administration did to our country is the invasion at the border. The last administration and their allies in Congress brought in millions and millions of migrants and gave them taxpayer-funded housing while your rent and housing costs skyrocketed. Over 60% of growth in the rental market came from foreign migrants. At the same time, illegal aliens stole American jobs and flooded emergency rooms, getting free health care and education paid for by you, the American taxpayer. They also increased the cost of law enforcement by numbers so high that they are not even to be mentioned. For the first time in 50 years, we are now seeing reverse migration as migrants go back home, leaving more housing and more jobs for Americans. In the year before my election, all net creation of jobs was going to foreign migrants. Since I took office, 100% of all net job creation has gone to American-born citizens.
Okay, first of all, American-born citizens. He doesn't want people who are American-born in the future to be considered citizens. This is going to be a matter the Supreme Court decides. Actually, the drafters of the 14th Amendment in 1868, they had already decided it. If you're born in the United States, you're a citizen. But this idea that there's a wonderful triumph in the idea that things are going so badly for the American economy that people are leaving America rather than coming to America. This, by the way, totally ignores, as Trump did, the distinction between legal immigration and illegal immigration, between people who go through the process and go through the bureaucracy and have every right to be here because they're doing it legally, making a distinction between people like that and people who sneak across the border. And most of the people who come to America do come with legal status. Therefore, the celebration of trying to treat this entire situation as an invasion is truly bizarre and inconsistent. And he also seems to totally ignore what has concerned conservatives for years and years and years, which is overspending and the government running a huge deficit and building up a huge debt. But his answer to that, give people more money and maybe my popularity will come back. Trump announced his warrior dividend. That's what he calls it, for every U.S. military service member. This is clip 17.
Along with the just passed One Big Beautiful Bill, tonight I am also proud to announce that more than 1,450,000, think of this, 1,450,000 military service members will receive a special, we call warrior dividend before Christmas, a warrior dividend. In honor of our nation's founding in 1776, we are sending every soldier $1,776. Think of that. And the checks are already on the way. Nobody understood that one until about 30 minutes ago.
Okay, what is he talking about? Usually if somebody tells you the check is in the mail, don't count on it. Coming up on the Michael Medved Show, more about 600% and what that means mathematically, because that became a big focus in President Trump's speech. The one thing that I think is extraordinary is he piled up just about the same level of fact-checking errors that he had in his campaign speeches, his rally speeches. Those speeches often went an hour and a half. This went only 18 minutes, thank God. We will get back to more of those highlights coming up on the Medved Show. And President Trump was a little bit muddled there, and part of what we just heard when he was talking about how many of those warrior dividends are going to be sent out or have, as he suggested, already been sent out. At one point he said there were going to be 1,000 checks, and then he corrected it and said there'd be 1,400,000 checks, which is a big difference to all the people who serve in our military. And by the way, people in America's military getting better paid, I think is perfectly legitimate. But the question becomes, where does this money come from? And one of the answers that they have been providing at the White House is there was a housing allowance that was already stipulated in congressional votes and was part of the budget process in the Congress. And the housing allowance is going to be apparently taxed for this warrior dividend. And the whole idea of dividends is something you get from stock investments if the stock of the company that you invest in is doing well. And most people don't think that the United States is doing particularly well right now. But President Trump tried to encourage people and to persuade them that we are in a golden age by talking about how much he has slashed drug prices. This is clip 18.
What a difference a year makes. In addition, I'm doing what no politician of either party has ever done, standing up to the special interests to dramatically reduce the price of prescription drugs. I negotiated directly with the drug companies and foreign nations, which were taking advantage of our country for many decades, to slash prices on drugs and pharmaceuticals by as much as 400, 500, and even 600%.
There is no 600%. If you slash the prices by 600%, then what you must mean is that he's talked the drug companies into paying you money. Slashing prices by 100% means that everything is free. And that is not the case here. There was also a projection that, again, I don't think anyone takes seriously about the largest tax refund season of all time, which he claims is right ahead. This is clip 16.
Next year, you will also see the results of the largest tax cuts in American history that were really accomplished through our great, big, beautiful bill, perhaps the most sweeping legislation ever passed in Congress. We wrapped 12 different bills up into one beautiful bill. That includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security for our great seniors. Under these cuts, many families will be saving between $11,000 and $20,000 a year, and next spring is projected to be the largest tax refund season of all time.
Okay, and the money comes from where exactly? Meanwhile, Daniel Dale, CNN's fact checker, actually spoke a bit about some of the problems with the president's speech last night. This is clip 15, Daniel Dale.
The president said inflation is stopped. As Harry pointed out, it's not stopped. It's 3%. In fact, September, that 3% rate was the fifth consecutive month inflation had increased. The president also said that he inherited the worst inflation. He said some might say in the history of the country. Again, he inherited 3% inflation in January. Even the 9.1% peak of the Biden era in June 2022 was about a 40-year high, not a 48-year high, nowhere close to the all-time high of more than 23%. He spoke of cutting prescription drug prices by 400 to 600%. Those figures are mathematically impossible. If you cut it by more than 100%, people would get paid to get their medications, which of course is not happening. He said the price of eggs has fallen, which is true, but then he said everything else is falling rapidly. Everything else is not falling rapidly. In fact, even on groceries in particular, far more products have increased in price this term than have decreased. He said again, he secured $18 trillion in investment this year. That number is total fiction. Even the White House website uses a figure of $9.6 trillion. And my detailed review found that that figure is a wild exaggeration, accounting vague promises, vague not even promises, and so on. He spoke of some states hitting $1.99 for gas. The lowest state average today is closer to $2.40. About 100 stations out of about 150,000 stations are below $2, according to the firm Gas Buddy. He also talked about immigration, made false claims there, saying that an army of 25 million people invaded the country under President Biden. Leaving aside this army rhetoric, the number was not even close to 25 million. It was under 11 million, and that counts millions of people who were rapidly expelled from the country.
Okay, this all is very important perspective because President Trump was relying so heavily on statistics that aren't real. Senator Mark Kelly on MS Now had a wish that for some different approach by President Trump. Here's what he had to say.
And he just says a bunch of stuff, and he says this stuff is going to happen. There's no policy there. And I'm kind of wondering, why is he so angry and desperate and defensive? Yeah. Somebody must have showed him some like abysmal poll numbers and say, you better get out there in front of the American people and explain to them why these poll numbers shouldn't be in the toilet. So, and then I wish somebody would tell him how math works. Yeah. You know, that the prices are going to go down 500 or 600%. Anyone who's been through like the 6th grade by then knows that is not a thing.
Okay, the 6th grade, I think maybe even earlier when you talk about lowering prices. I mean, right now, our 3rd grade granddaughter is just beginning to learn the fundamentals of mathematics, and she's pretty good. President Trump, not so much. So where do we go from here? And the real advantage, why was President Trump so insistent upon doing this particular speech, which is so much an echo of his campaign speeches and rally speeches, and the kind of response that he longs to get, the response that says, wow, this is uplifting, this is so outstanding. Is this going to even unite the GOP, where one of the big items of news of Congress is this rebellion by at least 4 members of the GOP caucus in the House of Representatives? And won't the situation with people's upset about the current economic situation, won't that only inevitably increase, given the fact that people are going to be paying millions of people, tens of millions of people, many of them in red states, many of them in involving people who are traditional Trump supporters, seeing that, no, they are not getting the biggest tax returns in history. No, they are not getting a warrior dividend in the mail. No, they are not getting all this promised golden age stuff. What they are getting is a bureaucratic nightmare. We will get to that and to some of the further reaction to the speech from last night, and to more on the Brown University manhunt. As the manhunt for the Brown University gunman who killed 2 people, wounded several others, that it continues another day without a suspect in custody. Authorities stress that community tips are crucial to resolving the case. Police yesterday asked for the public's help identifying a person shown in a photo who crossed paths with a person of interest. Authorities also released a map showing the streets where the person of interest was present in the hours before Sunday's attack. Meanwhile, limited security camera footage around the campus building where the attack occurred has spurred questions, including from the White House. The shooting left 2 students dead at the Ivy League school in Providence, Rhode Island, and 9 injured at Brown University. Meanwhile, we are coming up with new information about medical marijuana. Is it healthy? Is it safe? Is it good for people? Does it work? That's a crucial question with President Trump considering a change in marijuana's status. We will get to that and much more coming up on the Michael Medved Show in This Greatest Nation on God's Green Earth.